So, what's the deal with the word JavaScript? That means it's just like Java, doesn't it? No. The languages have absolutely nothing in common. It's just that when Netscape decided to invent JavaScript, Java was a big thing on the internet, and they thought that their thing would be a big thing too if they called it something similar. And yeah, there are similarities between the languages, just like there are between all languages, right? You know, parentheses and, you know, variables and stuff like that. So we're going to be using a different editor. The folks at home, if they're going to actually play with this stuff, aren't going to probably have TextPad. You can install it. It's free. If you install it, it'll harass you periodically telling you to pay for it. But it's free. And if you're only going to use it for a week or two, you know, install it, use it, and then delete it. So all I did is launched TextPad. And what is TextPad? It's a text editor. We could have been doing all of our programming in it, except it doesn't have a built-in Python doohickey. What I mean by that is there's no magic button for running Python. You can add a script that would make it run Python, but it's not like it'll do that syntax highlighting and move the cursor to the place that doesn't work or whatever. So it's not a real good way of doing Python development. If you take a Java course, then your instructor might make you use TextPad or Notepad rather than a IDE, an integrated development environment. In which case you do something like this, and it's not as useful because when you run it, it doesn't show you the syntax errors. Instead, all the errors just show up down here. Well, HTML doesn't show us any errors at all. If you get it wrong, it just doesn't work. So an HTML document, let's pop one up. Let's go and find one. I know the location of like the oldest page on the internet. It's not really, but it's one of them. It's got this anime character named Lum from USA Yatsura. All right, so that's obviously a really simple web page. This is like 1990s style, and look, there's a broken link there. All right, so if I right-click on it and do View Page Source, I'll see the HTML for it. Maybe. There we go. Very short page. Can I zoom in, make the text bigger? Yeah, there we go. All right. What we see are these things between angle braces and these things between double quotes. The things that are between angle braces are called tags. And if you've taken if you've done any web development or played with Dreamweaver or, taken one of Donna's courses, you probably know some of this stuff, or a lot of this stuff. You won't know how to hook JavaScript into it, though. So that's an HTML tag. This is a body tag, meaning that the actual body that shows up. This is all the stuff you actually see. There's also a head tag, short for header, which sets some stuff up, but this one doesn't have any stuff in the header. The header is where you might see your JavaScript functions stored. So every tag, or the vast majority of tags, have a closing tag. You'll have an opening tag like that, and then later on you'll see a closing tag, which is the same word but preceded with a backslash. I think that's a backslash. That's a forward slash. And so they pair up, just like curly braces in some of those languages, or if statements have to have some stuff indented in them. This marks the beginning of the HTML. This marks the end of the HTML. This marks the end of the body. This marks, or beginning. That's the end. Here's a division, meaning it's a block of space on the screen. And here's the end. Here's a table, beginning of the table, and there's the end. You can see how they're kind of nested. Now some tags don't require closing tags. BR just means break. It's like a new line, a /n. It doesn't have to have a break. There's no reason to do BR and then /BR. But if you want to be 100% correct, you can put a slash there in front of the closing brace, and it makes it what's known as a self-closing tag. Same for image. You don't put image and then put a bunch of information and then close image. If you wanted to be 100% correct to the syntax, you could go and put a slash there to indicate that it's a closing tag. And we'll play with all these things. That looks like it's the broken tag. That, to me, looks like it's the broken part of the image.
Yeah, because it's saying something about Star Wars.
Yeah.
Page was Star Wars.
Yeah. So at some time, there was a site called Logo54 that let you make up cool logos. And if the logo had been saved as an image file, and stored in the same directory, it would work. It's pretty astonishing. Whoops. What's all that? Yeah, okay. So obviously that website no longer exists. It's pretty astonishing that this page exists. That means that web page has been there since 1995 or whenever this was created. It's still there. That's cool. You'll find lots of broken links on the internet. So let's make our own web page. We're just going to use a couple a couple tags to start us off. And usually I have a PowerPoint in front of me for this lecture, but I find that the PowerPoint just makes things more confusing than just typing in examples. I'll still upload the PowerPoint, and we're definitely going to have the PowerPoint when we switch to doing JavaScript with HTML. Let me make my font larger. All right, how do you change the size of the font? I stumble over this every single time. Editor, document classes. Okay, there it is. So for me, I'm going to have to expand the HTML color. I can pick the font, and I can boost the size of the font if it stops doing the spinning wheel of doom. All right, cool. All right, so I need to save this as an HTML file just to play with. What lecture are we on?
I think it's whiskey.
All righty. So put it in your favorite directory. Change the type of it from .txt to .html. Otherwise, when you try to view it, it'll just launch it in Notepad. And so lecture W. .java, I misclicked. .html. All right, they all have to start with the HTML tag. They all have to end with the closing HTML tag. Now, honestly, the browsers are pretty forgiving, and if you forget some closing tags, it still does its dead level best to try to display it, because the browsers assume that stupid humans coded it and that they're going to make mistakes, and so they're not machine perfect. There are validators you can do where you upload your web page to the validator and it tells you how many mistakes you made in it, right? And shows you, you didn't do a close tag here and all that. We're going to try to do good. Let's make a head and a slash head. What kind of information can go in the head? How about the title for the web page? Used to be that titles were pretty cool, right? Because all you had was one page and a window, and so you had a lot of room for a title. Nowadays, you just get these itchy-bitchy little, things, so we don't have much room. But we certainly want to know how. HTML title tag. Quack it tutorials. All right, anyways, if you look at it, the title tag is used there, and then there's a close tag, and then there's some text between it. So let's do that. You'll see that I kind of use tabbing to track things. You don't have to use tabbing. You don't have to put spaces between this stuff at all. You could write it like this. You could totally botch it, right? It'll work just as well. But I find that it makes it easier to follow. And since I'm wanting, y'all to follow if you want. All right, so that's the title tag, and let's actually put a title. This is lecture W HTML / title. Now, a common mistake when using this editor is if you don't save your document and you click the little planet which loads it in the web browser, it loads the old version of it up, which is nothing, right? Didn't work. Or maybe it did. But quite often, you'll make a whole bunch of changes, you'll try to run it, and it's not saved. How can I tell it's not saved? It's got an asterisk by the file name. So pretty much after every change I make, I should hit Control-S to save it. Or you can go for the little floppy disk over here, do floppy, whoopsie, and then do, planet to view it. But there's no data in it. All it is right now is a title, right where it says lecture WHTML. Local or shared file means it's not on the internet, right? It wasn't prefixed with HTTP : Instead, it was a local path. I guess they don't show the HTTP:// in front of these things anymore. Like that, but I know that y'all have seen them, right? That stands for Hypertext Protocol. Hypertext is a way of linking one document to another. Hypertext means that there will be links in it, and you click it and it'll go to another page. And hypertext predates the web by a long ways, right? You could have computer screens, and you'd move your cursor up to something, and you'd hit enter on it, and it'd jump to a different document, right? Way back before the internet was ever invented. All right, we're done with that. Let's put some body down here. So body, I'm going to put my close. I like to add the closing tag as soon as I do the open tag, so I don't forget. And let's put a division here. A division is just a block on the screen. You won't be able to see it, but it's a way of dividing things up. All righty. We don't have any text, so let's make a paragraph of text. /p and slash. All right. And like I said, all of these spaces and tabs and stuff like that is purely optional. And matter of fact, if you add some extra spaces here, I'm not even sure that you're going to view it that way. I think it's going to just show it saying this is some text with only one space between it. Let's see if that's true. All right, yeah, see what I mean? It took out that all right, there's some old school ways of modifying the way the text appears on the screen, right? Black and white's kind of boring. Like there's a tag for bold facing it, or a tag for underlining it, or not a, stuff like that. Those are no longer recommended. There's a fancy term for it, deprecated. If it's deprecated, it means it's still supported, or it might be supported, but browsers in the future may not support it. It's highly recommended you don't do them. But if we wanted to, let's see if we can underline like this. I think that's the tag for doing, tag for underlining. I'm going to save it with Control-S, run it, and it underlined it. If I ran it through a validator, it would tell me that that tag is deprecated. Or if I Googled up, a JavaScript reference, another name for JavaScript is ECMAScript. When it became a standard, when Netscape said, okay, we don't own the language anymore, a standards body will make modifications to it. Apparently they thought the name JavaScript was stupid since it had nothing to do with Java, and they renamed it ECMAScript, and I don't know what ECMAScript stands for, and everybody calls it JavaScript. So, that is one way of doing it, but it's not the right way of doing it. What you're supposed to do is use what are known as spans. Let me see if I can get the syntax for the span correctly. So paragraph, this, and now I'm going to do quote, span, end quote. But inside that span, I'm going to put some information. I'm going to go back and fill it in. Is awesome. /span, /p. And I kind of violated my rules about indenting everything. The only problem with indenting stuff is that when I need to start scrolling up and down, it's hard for y'all to follow. I think I'm going to move the is awesome right next to this. But maybe not, because I'm going to add some stuff. All we've seen so far are simple tags. And what do I mean by that? You can expand, you can customize the way the tags work using properties. I'm going to add a style property to the word span to make my text red. Style equals, I'm going to put is awesome underneath it because I'm going to start running out of space. right? Style equals either single quote or double quote works. Quote, color, colon. I think I have to put quotes around it. So since I opened it up with a double quote, I'm going to use single quotes to specify the color. So single apostrophe, red, end apostrophe, end double quote. So let's dissect what we're seeing here. Style is a property. Properties are set with the equal sign. Properties are set with the equal sign and then some stuff between quotes. So a tag are the things between the curly braces, the angle braces. The properties modify the way the tags work. And so what is this doing? It's changing the color for the duration of this span from whatever it was, and by default it's black.
There's no quotes around red.
No quotes on red?
No quotes.
All right, cool. Would it work though? Let's
Didn't-
find out.
didn't on mine, but
All right. Thanks. Let's see. Yep, that didn't work, so take the little apostrophes out. My mistake. Thank you. Make sure you save it all. Click the planet. And it modified the appearance of the text. The style property has a whole bunch of style attributes. Have I been calling it a property the whole time? This is an attribute. That's a tag, that's an attribute. And the style attribute has a whole bunch of properties you can do. You can set the size of the font, you can set which font it is, or what class of font it is, like sans serif, which means no lines over the top and the bottom of the letters, or make it italic, or all sorts of stuff like that. Now, among some of the properties that you can set up is what you want it to do when you move your cursor over it or when you click it. Because everything we create on this page is an object in memory. Behind the scenes, when your web page loads up this text, when your web browser, when Chrome or whatever loads up this text, it creates in its little brain, in its memory, what's known as a document object model, DOM, which is just a tree-like structure of all these elements. Yeah. And then the browser itself, the graphics engine of the browser, turns that document object model into something that's on the screen. But you could have a browser that displayed pure text, right? It didn't show images and stuff like that. And there was such a thing. What was it called? It wasn't called Gopher. Oh gosh. But in the early days of the internet, and even predating web browsers, you had a browser that worked with HTML, but it didn't support images and colors and stuff. It was defined, and then, just for, like Unix terminals and whatever, text only. Can't believe I've forgotten the name of it. Kermit? Is that what it's called? Oh yeah, great. Kermit browser. Kermit 1995. All right, so if you loaded up a web page using Kermit, if you loaded up something really extraordinarily complex like eBay or Amazon or something like that, I don't even know what it looked like. But if it was simple, if it was designed to be viewed with Kermit, then, you'd see some stuff. Pure text with links that you could click on. Well, let's do a link. Let's make a link to the rose.edu webpage. I'm going to put that in a different division. And I guess I should stop periodically. Is anybody not getting what they want to see? And what I mean by that is if you save it and launch the browser, do you get something close to that? If not, flag me down. Are we good? I guess we're good. Okay. So I'm going to start another division to hold my links. Not necessary. I'm just going to show you. So div style equals quote, and I want to specify the background color, and I don't remember if it's BG color or what. So CSS, which stands for Cascading Style Sheets, we'll talk about that at another time. Style background color. Is it the whole word?
Yeah, I think so.
All right.
It's been a long time since I did HTML.
Yep, background dash color, and then you can specify the color using a hexadecimal RGB code, or you could just, use a word like red or whatever. All right, so style equals, quote, background dash color, colon, and we're going to make it a pale gray. I just happen to know enough about RGB that I can say that DD is a pale gray. And by the way, you should separate all of your properties in your style attribute with semicolons. And if there's only one attribute, it's okay to leave it out. But if you were going to have more than one attribute, like I was going to set the text color in this division as well, I could. All right, so there's my division. I'm going to close it with a slash div. I could start a paragraph of text, a slash paragraph, and let's make a link. The syntax for a link is a little bit different and much more complicated than all of our other tags have been. It's called an anchor tag. So angle A space href, which stands for hypertext reference. It's going to create a link to another page. Equals, quote, and we need to put the URL of the page we want to open. Why not just rows.edu? So http://rows.edu, end quote, end brace. But that's not enough. That doesn't specify the text that will be displayed there. Like I could just put the word click me there. After I put the word click me there, though, I need a closing tag. Everything else is at a closing tag. At least we haven't seen any that don't yet. And so after the words click me, I'm going to close my tag. And if it would help to break these out into indented form, I could. You really won't see very many people do that. But what this is showing is that this is going to be a link. It's going to have the text click me. And if they click on the text, it's going to open that web page. Well, that's a lot of big talk. Let's find out if it's true. All right. So you see that our division tag had a style, which we used to set the background color. You can do all sorts of stuff with division. You can specify places on the screen. HTML has gotten extraordinarily complex over, the years to support better and better looking web pages. If you tried to view the modern web with, a browser installed, on your Windows 95 computer or something like that, it would look like absolute gibberish. The web pages are not very backward compatible. They try to be, right? Anyways, so the HTML spec keeps getting expanded. The newest one is HTML5, and HTML5 has all sorts of support for stuff that can make the web pages even more interactive, so that you could have like games or videos playing in the parts of it. You could do a lot of that stuff in earlier versions of it, but they keep updating the spec. And in one of the specs, they did deprecate all the inline tags that change the appearance like that, where you could change the color of the text and whatever. Instead, you're supposed to do it through styles. Now, there's two ways of using styles. One is that you could just create a style attribute that was attached to that tag. The other is you can do what's known as cascading style sheets, which is where you go up and you define all your styles somewhere else. And you could say, okay, I want every paragraph to be red. And so somewhere up there in your cascading style sheet, you would specify, okay, so for every P tag, every paragraph tag, I want the text to be red.
Could it be like P equals style red?
Yeah, let's see if we can get that going. So CSS style example. All right, so just like this, inside the header tag, we're going to create a style tag, and we're going to say that every paragraph is centered and red. And then we close the style. All right, that example just makes it really lickety-split easy. Let's go give that a shot. So I'm going to come over here, and inside my head, all alone in my head, it's scary in there, slash style, not slash, angle style, close style, P, meaning this is true for every paragraph tag. And then inside the curly braces, you list the same kind of stuff that we were putting in quotes down here. So you could do color red, semicolon. Red's kind of nasty looking. Let's make it a different color. Color green. Actually, red's a great color, but you know, color green, color purple, something like that. Color purple, color colon purple, semicolon, because we have more than one attribute going along. And then text dash align colon center, semicolon, closing brace. And since we opened up a style tag, we better close it. So underneath here, angle slash style. So why is it called cascading style sheets? Because you can make it to where this tag applies to every paragraph, but then you can have some sub styles that every paragraph that is identified with a specific ID has some different attributes. But if you don't specify anything else, if you don't specify a new color for it, that sub attribute, it goes ahead and uses this one. So, you know, it cascades. You could have some kind of more specific paragraph that picks up everything here, but with further customizations. And then another one that picks up everything from all of those, but with some further customizations. So when I save it and run it, I ought to see some purple text. That's my hope. However, the link is not going to be purple. It's going to be blue. Because the color of this inside the anchor tag is specified by a different style than just color. We could figure it out. Or we could probably put a different, we could probably put a span or something like that right here to change its color. Let's give this a shot. All right. Everything is purple except for that because we specified that to be red, and they click me because that's the default color for an ahref. Let's change some stuff about the ahref. That's an A tag. We're going to come up here and we're going to create a second style specifier for A, for anchors. Let's just, I don't know. What kind of appearance do we want to give it? How about italics? How do we send in italics? CSS italic style. Font style property. Normal, italic, so it's font dash style colon italic. Let's give that a try. So font dash style colon italic semicolon close brace. And if we wanted to give it a different color, we think our tags ought to be, yellow. That'll look pretty bad. Color colon yellow semicolon. Now that I've got this working right, I'm going to kind of condense it so that it's all on one line. And that's a lowercase p, by the way, to match that. Proper HTML dictates that the tags be lowercase. But like I said, the browsers are kind of generous, and they'd probably work if we made it uppercase as well. But don't. But I just want to prove to myself that that's still the case. So Control S to save it, plan it to run it, write animated italic in yellow. So what if, I don't know, that may be about enough examples of that. Let's create an image. Let's put an image on our screen. But I better slow down and make sure everybody who wants this has got it going. Well, before I do that, I'm going to make a few condensing. I'm going to move the text for the anchor tag all in one line. That's usually how you'll see it. Since this is only one line of text, I'm going to actually move it up there like that. Makes it harder to read though, doesn't it? Anyways. Alright, now for an image. And I need to go find a URL for some image. And I could make it an image that was just saved in my local directory. I hope that would work. I'm not convinced it'll work though. So I'm going to grab the URL of some picture on the internet. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure that if I saved it to my local directory, I'd be able to get it to work. Let me prove that to myself before. Not poopy, puppy. I'm going to grab a puppy image, save it to the directory, and try to load it and see if it works. Okay, he's cute. Alright, so I'm just going to do a save as. Forgive me for going fast, but I want to make sure this works before I have y'all do it. Now I'm going to go back here and I'm going to make a reference to my puppy. Image space hung. Image source equals puppy.jpg. End quote. This is one of the tags that doesn't have a closing tag, but you can make it a self-closing tag. Let's see if it works. Control S, click the planet.
Whoa.
Now that's a big puppy. All right. But we'll fix that. Okay, so I want y'all to do the same thing. Go and find a picture that you like and save it to the same directory that the HTML is in. I'm going to repeat those steps of a different picture. So I'm going to delete my image tag and I'm going to go and save a different picture. Oh, the reason it was so huge is because I'm zoomed way in, right? In order for y'all to see this. I'm at 300%. There, that's better. But anyways, okay, so I'm going to go and find myself a different puppy. Or Snoopy or something like that. Yeah, how about Snoopy? Yeah, classic. If you load up an image and it's got this checkerboard pattern behind it, that is really good news. Why? Because it means that that part is transparent. So if you put him on a colored background, if it wasn't transparent, you'd get a white box around Snoopy, which would be lame. But since it's transparent, we'll see the background color underneath it. So I like that idea. I'm going to save this Snoopy. Give it a good, easy file name to remember, because if you get the file name wrong, it's not going to work. Snoopoo? I cannot type. Snoopy. Okay, so I've saved an image to that directory. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to modify. Am I going to put it in a brand new division? Why not? So underneath my closing division tag, I'm going to start a new one. Whoops, but not in caps. And I'm going to close it because I like closing them as soon as I open it. And an image, IMG, angle IMG, and one of the attributes of the image tag is the source, which is the path to the file. Now it could be a long path like HTTP:/. You saw how when I loaded up that Lumland page, we had a really long background path, you know, for that planet image. There it is, right? If I wanted to actually put that in my web page, I'd have to paste that whole thing in there. I'm not gonna. I want Snoopy. So image source equals quote Snoopy, end quote, close angle. And since it's a self-closing tag, since you don't put / image, you just do that. And why is it self-closing? Because there's nothing you would want to put between it. Say that there was a / image here, right? What would you put there? Nothing, right? All right. So here's another self-closing tag, which is the BR tag. Say I wanted to put some text underneath Snoopy, like Snoop rules. All right. Now when I view it, Control S and view it, well, for one thing, it didn't show Snoopy. I've made some kind of mistake. The puppy worked, Snoopy didn't, I'll figure it out. But see, it put Snoop right next to the image. What if I wanted it underneath? I could put it in its own paragraph, but I could just do open brace, BR, into brace. And that means line feed. That means break. Oh, I see what I did wrong. What did I do wrong there? I didn't put the extension. So what's the extension of the file? Since it has transparency, that means it's either a PNG or a GIF. I better go back here and find out for sure. It's a PNG. Those are the only two formats that I know of that support transparency. And by the way, GIF, the inventor of the format insists that it's pronounced GIF.
It's not.
And everybody else says GIF because it's a graphic interchange format. Graphic, GIF, right? It's not a giraffic interchange format, but whatever. So that ought to view Snoopy, and it ought to have the text Snoop rules underneath it. And he's all big and stuff. I can change his size. Notice that Snoop is not centered, unlike everything else. Why is that? Because it's not opened up with a paragraph tag. And it's the paragraph tag where we aligned it. So the right thing to do would have been, instead of using a BR to break the text, would actually just have been to do a like that. Then that would be centered. All right, but we want to change its size. Two ways of doing that. There's old school and new school. Old school is to use some attributes. And I think the attributes work just like this. Height, whoopsie, height equals 200. I think that'll do it. Yep. He's not centered. What if we wanted him centered? You can use a center tag. And again, that's old school, but you could do angle, center, end angle, and then /center. That ought to do the trick. But really, we should do it through style tags. Everything is supposed to be done through style tags anymore, since like HTML3. Okay, so he's centered now. So obviously there is a style for centering things, right? But I'm just going to stick with the center tag here for funsies. And this made him smaller. But what we should have done, and let's go ahead and be cool about it, is actually use a style for it. Style equals, quote, quote. Let me make absolutely sure I get it correct. I think it's just width, right? Image, style, CSS, height or width, one of the other. If you set one, it scales it appropriately. Yeah, so it's just width colon, and you could set a page percentage, or you could set a value, and I don't even know what auto does. I guess auto does what it was doing anyways. Okay, so for our image, width colon 50%. He's going to take up half the page. Yeah, that looks nice. Or maybe only should take up 30% of the page. I keep hitting a key that pops that up because in another editor it launches the browser. All right. I'm liking him. And since he's transparent around it, if we put some color behind him, we'd be able to see it. Let's see if we can make a background for the entire page, a background color for it.
What if your picture won't show up?
Okay, I'll come right over there. So let's say that the body, I'm not sure this is going to work, but let's try it. Style equals, quote, background dash color, colon, silver. What's that going to look like? Pink? Mauve? Yeah, I did it again. There, right? And so since he was transparent around the edges, we can see that background color. If he hadn't been transparent around the edges, then he would have had a white block around him. So a common thing to do is if you have a picture that only has a couple of colors in it, is to load it in, edit it with an image editor that supports transparency. All right, let's pause and make sure it's going good for everybody. All right, maybe just a few more tags and then we'll be done. How about a table tag? People use tables for all sorts of incorrect purposes because it's how you did it in the 90s before you had other ways of formatting stuff. And what do I mean by that? You can do positional stuff where you arrange things in columns or put something on the left side as opposed to the right side. So let's put a table underneath Snoopy or whatever you've got going on. So a new division and a closed division. The table tag starts with table and ends in slash table. Now, table's got several elements. It's got a header, and it's got a row, and then inside the row there are columns, which for some reason they call D rather than C. It's the TD tag. I'm not sure. I guess it just means division. I'm not going to add a header to my table. I'm just going to start right off with a row. So TR stands for table row. And inside my row, I'm going to create a column. So Snoopy is one column, and he is cool. Now I'm going to show you what that looks like so far. These are actually two columns in the same row. Whoops, I made a mistake. Did anybody spot my mistake? It's where the cursor is.
Closing.
Yeah, why am I closing the tag before I've opened it? Should look like that. All right, so Snoopy is cool. Now it's not centered and it doesn't have a border or anything around it. Maybe we can fix that. But for now I'm just going to, I want the border just to kind of distinguish it. Border equals 1. Let's see what that does. Again, this is old school way of specifying this information. It's not the coolest, but it's kind of simple. Right, and there, you've seen this kind of stuff in really, really old web pages. I'm going to put the border around it like that. Good enough, good enough. Now let's add another row. Add one for Garfield. He's lazy, and that's going to be his name or attribute. So TR for another row, TD for another column, Garfield slash TD, and TD, he's lazy, slash TD, and then slash TR to close that row. Make sure that works before I make y'all do it. Okay, yeah. It's really bugging me that this isn't centered, and we know how to do that, right? We could either do it with a style attribute in our div. Yeah, I want to find out how to center it correctly. Although lots of people use the center tag. Div center CSS. Align. I'm not digging that. Forget it. If I can't figure out how to do it in 20 seconds, I'm not going to do it. So, after my div, I'm going to center it. Now I want to show you something, which is I'm not going to close that tag, and I'm going to run it, and it works anyways. Back in the olden days, there was a little place down here that would display whenever you had an error. You might see a little message that said JavaScript error or formatting error or whatever. Nowadays, browsers don't display any error information, right? So you don't know if it's broken. It just won't display something, or it won't work. And it's too bad that there's no debug mode, as far as I know, that'll go in and show those errors after all. But I left the tag out, but it's okay to leave it out because all of this stuff I've done in here gets closed out when it hits that div right there. So technically, I didn't even have to. I'm going to delete this stuff, and please don't. If I deleted those things, I've got a lot of unclosed tags. I didn't close my row. I didn't close my table. I didn't close the centering. But it works anyways because when it hit this closed div, it knew that it had to close everything else. But that's bad. That's bad programming. So I'm going to add my center tag here. And just to be correct, I'm going to move or add a /center tag underneath the /table. And my formatting, my indentation and stuff's getting a little bit wrong. Now I'm going to try to find an HTML validator so I can test my code against the standards. Oh, let's do something else. Let's use some CSS style rather than border is equal to 1 to see if we can make this look a little bit better. So I'm going to delete that border equals 1, and I'm going to do style equals quote background colon I don't know, £. Let's just make something up. I want to. The way this works is you have 2 letters or numbers for R, 2 letters or numbers for G, and 2 letters or numbers for B. And so if I want something to be kind of purple, the R and the G need to be higher than the B. So how about maxing out the R, lowering down the G to half brightness because this is in hexadecimal, and then maxing out the B. That ought to be some horrible shade of purple or violet or something like that, fuchsia. Or it's going to look pretty bad. Yeah. That came out slightly better than I was expecting. You can come up and Google up CSS named colors and get a list. Well, really, I wanted a whole list and not just. Okay, thanks. But any of these are fair game, right, for backgrounds. So you don't have to specify the HTML, like floral white or Gainsborough. Honeydew, yeah, that sounds good. So I'm going to change that to honeydew. And it's okay if you don't get the capitalization just right. All right. So I set a background for it, but I didn't set a border. So border colon 1px solid.
Do you need a semicolon?
Red. Yeah, I'm missing a semicolon. Right there. Thank you so much. There should have been a semicolon there. Now I put a border around it, but it didn't put a border around each element. I'm going to leave that alone, but you could put a border around each element. Or you could create a cascading style sheet that said all elements should have a border of 1 as well. You know, I could scroll up to the top and put it there. What would happen if I combine them? I'm just going to try this. Border equals 1, like we had before. I just want to see what happens. All right. Leave that off. Okay. So you can use tables for positioning things on the screen, but you shouldn't. You should instead find ways of using the div tag instead. But you'll see an awful lot of people because it's how you used to do it. Or it was one way how to do it. All right. Since we're getting close to the end of the class, I want to find an HTML validator and compare my code to the standard. So I'm going to come up here and type in HTML validator. Validate by direct input. And I'm just going to copy and paste my text. Alrighty. Warning, consider you're adding a lang attribute to the HTML tag. Start tag seen without a doc type first. The center tag is obsolete, right, like I told you. The image element must have an alt attribute. What does alt do? Alt is if you're using a screen reader, right, for the visually impaired. And if they move their cursor or selection device over the image, it would speak that text. Or if the image won't show, hopefully it'll show the alt text. Let's do that. Let's add an alt text to our Snoopy, even if it doesn't do anything. It's a little bit more correct. So image source equals snoopy.png. I'm going to put it first here. Alt equals top dog, end quote. Now I may not even see that, right? That's all right. That's all right. It's just part of the standard. If we go and look at the standard HTML spec, right? Standard HTML tag or something like that, we'll see that we're supposed to put a bunch of stuff in it. We're supposed to add a doc type, which specifies that it's HTML. We could put a created tag, and there's all sorts of stuff we can put up there. Let's go and look at Rose's source. Language is equal to EEN. Prefix is equal to all sorts of stuff. All sorts of stuff. Here we see some JavaScript defining functions and stuff like that and making function calls. And you can see they did not use any spacing at all to make this easy to read. But then we see our div tags, and they're putting divs inside of divs, inside of divs, inside of divs, inside of divs, which is fair. You can do that. And so on. I wonder what the validator would do with all this. We're going to stop here and upload our result, but I want to see what happens if I try to validate that. See how good our web developers are, and I'm kidding. All right, here we go. Oh, look at that. We're going to fire them. Look how many mistakes they made. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. It only found 15. That's probably better than mine was, right? Because their thing is 20,000 times as long as mine. The type attribute for the style is not needed and should be omitted. Well, that's news to me. Script. Once we do the JavaScript, we're going to enclose our JavaScript inside the script tag. This is saying I want you to load up your JavaScript in a separate file. Because JavaScript is text just like HTML. Your browser goes and makes a connection to the server and asks for a file. All that file is text, right? That's why we're able to right-click and do View Source. Well, the JavaScript's the same way. It also comes in by text, and it's purely up to the browser to interpret it. See all sorts of things. Allow transparency, width and height. And see, they're doing it old school rather than doing it all with style. And there's nothing wrong with doing that because no browser is ever going to do away with the fact that you should be able to set the width and the height, you know, with the inline attributes. All right, that's enough. Pretty cool, guys. Let's make a Dropbox for that. You can upload it. If you were doing it at home, I hope it was interesting anyways. If you were doing it at home, if you wanted to do it with Notepad, I should have said this at the beginning rather than the end, is to edit it in Notepad. Create something. Save it. Don't save it as a text document. Choose all files. Go out here. Save it. And then like t.html. Make sure you get the HTML syntax. And then you can go out to your web browser. I mean, not your browser, your file browser. Find your directory. Double click on that HTML file and it'll view it. Obviously, that's a lot more arduous than just downloading text. Well, than being able to view it by clicking on a planet icon. But you can do all your web development you wanted to just with Notepad. Obviously, it's better if you have tools dedicated to the purpose, and even TextPad's really primitive as opposed to some HTML editors. All right, let's call ourselves done.